My girlfriend of 3 years aimed the main cannon of her mecha at me, just to trade for a spot inside the human fortress. She pointed at my mutated right arm, changed to save her, screamed hysterically, and told the law enforcement squad I was an infected mutant, begging the mecha to immediately execute the obliteration protocol on me. I looked into her cold and rational eyes, and felt disgusted, but little did she know. The next second the earth suddenly shattered. A pure white giant tiger over 100 meters long burst out of the ground and crushed the vanguard-grade mecha with a single claw. As everyone watched in shock and terror, that invincible king of beasts actually lowered its head and, with a deep, trembling voice, called me son. Turns out the so-called mutation wasn't an infection. It was a divine sequence that breaks the limits of carbon-based life. And all of this began during that escape half a month ago. Just a few days earlier, the sky looked like it was covered by thick frosted glass. Blue alien spores floated in the air. This is the ruined city codenamed 047. Once a prosperous human home, now only ruined walls remained. My girlfriend Lin Wan was curled up beneath a collapsed load-bearing wall. Her pale face was covered in dust. Shivering in fear, she used to be the proud belle of her college department. But this half-month of running for her life had completely broken her spirit. She cried and asked me if we were going to die here. I swallowed with a dry throat, fed her the last sip of water, and told her not to worry. With the fortress patrol route, we would survive during these 2 weeks. If I hadn't repeatedly risked my life to protect her, she would have become food for the mutated beasts of the wasteland. Just then, a massive engine roar came from above. A blue searchlight beam ripped through the haze. That was the symbol of the highest military power of human civilization, psionic power. The mecha squad swept across the ruins in the distance. Lin Wan's face instantly filled with wild joy, wanting to call out for help loudly. But I quickly covered her mouth tightly, pushed her into the shadows. Along with a tooth-grinding clicking sound, a blade-arm boar beast, the size of a small car, climbed down. Its compound eyes flashed with chilly red light. The sharp, sword-like forelimbs crept towards us. The mecha roar faded into the distance. But death was approaching. The boar beast didn't hesitate at all, and slashed at Lin Wan. I let out a low growl, and shoved her aside, grabbed a prepared rebar and stabbed at its compound eye. The massive recoil instantly tore my palm. Not only did the rebar not pierce its shell, it was bent forcibly. The other forelimb of the boar beast swept straight into my chest. I was sent flying, and crashed into a section of a low wall. The severe pain almost made me faint on the spot. Seeing the monster closing in again, my heart pounded violently. A burning energy exploded suddenly from deep within my heart, rushed wildly through my veins into my right arm. My right arm felt like it was about to catch fire. On the surface of my skin, a layer of dark gold scales actually grew. A mechanical prompt flashed through my mind. The only level 1 talent, origin sequence, is awakening. Localized behemoth transformation completed successfully. I had no time to think about what was happening. The beast's deadly blade arm was coming down on my head. I instinctively raised my scale-covered arm and grabbed it. An astonishing scene unfolded amid the ruins. The forelimb that could slice through armored vehicles was gripped tightly in my hand. A surge of overwhelming, pure force followed. The monster's tough, chitinous exoskeleton shattered bit by bit. I landed a heavy punch, slamming it into its belly. The massive boar beast was thrown by this inhuman strength and smashed outside the ruins. It struggled a little and then died for good. The crisis was over. I breathed heavily to steady myself. The dark golden scales on my right arm faded away slowly with my heartbeat. Returning to normal, I turned my head, wanting to give Lin Wan a smile after surviving the disaster. But what I saw was her pressed tightly in the corner, trembling. There was no relief in her gaze, only extreme terror that pierced the heart, and deep disgust. Her lips trembled, and she uttered the word monster. Those 2 words felt like cold hammers hitting my heart. I was about to explain, but a wave of intense dizziness hit me. The power from awakening drained all my strength instantly. I leaned weakly against the pile of rubble. Everything went dark. During this suffocating silence, 3 blinding beams suddenly descended from the sky. 3 Vanguard-class guard mechas, each 15 meters tall, landed. Cold steel armor surfaces glowed with blue patterns. The spotlights made the ruins as bright as daylight. The Mecha loudspeaker broadcasted a synthesized voice. Life signal detected. The terror in Lin Wan's eyes instantly turned into ecstatic joy. She scrambled up and stumbled towards the light, shouting she's a survivor, begging them to save her. I knelt halfway in the shadows, watching her run toward the brightness. Reached out my right hand but only grabbed cold air. The towering Mecha looked down at Lin Wan on the ground. A green scan beam swept over her body, confirmed no signs of alien spore infection. Permission to board. The Mecha's abdominal hatch opened, and a lift descended. Lin Wan was tearfully overwhelmed. She stepped onto it with one foot, but the pilot suddenly asked, "There's another signal deep in the ruins." Asked if that's her companion, and whether he was safe. Lin Wan's body froze sharply at that moment. Human fortresses have strictly cruel rules of evolution. Anyone mutated by contact with spores must be executed or exiled if associated with infectees. People involved would also be cast out into the wasteland. She turned to look at me, hidden in the shadows. Unable to stand, I looked at her expectantly, hoping she would save me. If she said we were together, the Mecha would take me to the medical bay. I might still survive in this cruel wasteland. But faced with the ultimate survival temptation, emotion shattered instantly. She took a deep breath, her eyes turning incredibly cold and rational, and spoke into the communicator, clearly saying I wasn't her companion. She even added without a hint of hesitation that I had grown monster scales, claimed I was infected, requested immediate evolutionary cleansing for safety, so she could enter the safe zone spotless. She ruthlessly cut off my lifeline. In the shadows, my pupils contracted sharply, staring fiercely at this woman. No furious outburst, nor any desperate pleading. Turns out that, in the face of the wasteland, human feelings can be so cheap. The Mecha pilot received the report. Immediately confirmed infection. The central Mecha mechanically raised its massive right arm. The pitch-black high-frequency particle cannon locked right onto me. The azure energy surged madly. A chilling, buzzing hum rang out. The shadow of death instantly engulfed me. Lin Wan turned around. She no longer looked at me. She went straight into the mech.
To him.
I was already a piece of trash, dead in the past. I slowly closed my eyes. An unprecedented rage ignited in my chest. If these are humanity's laws, then so be it. The particle cannon's energy peaked. Sapphire beams from all four ports were about to erupt. At this critical moment, the ground wailed without warning. The ruined earth for miles around began to quake violently. Countless boulders were shaken up, floating in midair by invisible force. A terrifying pressure thickened the very air. It shot skyward. Sirens in the mech blared shrilly and crazily. Alert. Energy reaction detected. Unable to measure transcendent class. In the next second, under Lin Wan and the pilot's horrified eyes, an enormous tiger paw, as colossal as a mountain, jade-like white, broke through the earth, bursting out of the ground. Golden energy swirled around the giant claw, ready to sever all. Like swatting a fly, it slammed directly onto the mech's energy shield. A shield said to withstand a full attack from a high-level star beast. Shattered in an instant. Immediately after, a domineering tiger's roar shattered the skies over the ruins. Who dares touch my son? With a furious tiger's roar, the ruined land collapsed with a thunderous crash. A pure white giant beast over 100 meters long emerged. Its entire body was covered with pure white fur, like polar snow. On every strand of fur, deadly, chilling sharpness flowed. Before this massive beast, over 100 meters long, the human mechs that were once sources of pride looked like plastic toys. Inside the mech cockpit, red warning lights flashed wildly. Lin Wan, sitting in the co-pilot seat, already had legs trembling with fear. She collapsed back in her seat, her mind blank. Her whole body shook. The white tiger's beastly eyes, gold as the sun, coldly swept over the mech. Just a glance made the psionic core groan under overwhelming strain. It raised its right paw, without using any special abilities, relying only on pure mass. The mech targeting me, linked to an internal high-frequency particle cannon, was swatted by the white tiger. and forcibly smashed into flying scraps of metal. The massive impact sent the hundreds-ton mech flying, crashing through a dozen buildings in a row. Before finally losing power, the remaining two mechs were scared out of their minds, not daring to even think of fighting back. They instantly pushed their engines to the max, turned into streaks of light, and desperately fled toward the fortress. In the swirling smoke and dust, the two fleeing mechs looked like beaten dogs. The white tiger didn't give chase, but instead halted its mountain-like body. That wild, overwhelming aura that changed the world suddenly vanished completely. In my stunned gaze, he carefully lowered his head. The massive movement showed a surprising gentleness for fear of disturbing me. The tiger's head, bigger than a heavy truck, drew near to me. In his golden pupils, there was now a deeply human tenderness. A wave of warm breath gently swept over my dust-covered cheek. Then a deep, choked-up, middle-aged man's voice rang out in my mind. "My boy, Dad is late. You've suffered all these years." I froze in place, even though a decade had passed. And even if he'd now become a terrifying beast, I still instantly recognized the owner of that voice. From my dry throat, a trembling dad squeezed out. "In these 10 years, I, who never cried crawling and fighting on the wastes, felt my eyes red in that instant. Every tight nerve in me finally loosened. My vision went black. Held gently by the white tiger's spiritual energy, I fell into deep sleep. No idea how much time passed. I opened my eyes again and found myself lying inside a vibrant, enormous cave. The air was suffused with spiritual energy, making my damaged meridians tingle with pleasure. A hearty laugh echoed over. I sat up with a jolt to see a muscular, granite-like burly man, holding a stone pot radiating waves of power, striding toward me, his wild white hair, and the pale golden tiger totem on his chest. Meant he was my father, missing these 10 years since seeking the antidote. Lu Zhanshan ruffled my hair, eyes deep and thoughtful. He told me to eat first. With each mouthful of stew, a torrent of energy healed my hidden wounds. My father then revealed the world-shaking truth of the past decade. The alien Baozi was not a deadly virus that would destroy humanity, but a catalyst Earth had accepted to defend itself against higher dimensional threats. It was Earth's will to fight back. The conglomerates and fortress, elites to monopolize power, hid the truth and depended on external forces, using cold, machine-driven laws to rule. Those approaching the evolutionary threshold were branded monsters. Unwilling to accept this, my father ventured deep into the meteor crater and fused with the first generation of Baozi. Now, the entire 10,000 mountains revered him as the Metal Tiger King.
Hearing this,
my entire worldview was overturned. I looked down at my right hand, remembering Lin Wan's disgusted expression. I asked my father, "Growing scales, does that mean I'm evolving too?" My father grabbed my arm, and after checking carefully, broke into utter joy. He excitedly patted my shoulder and said, "My body had no chaotic genes at all. What I awakened was Earth's most perfect origin sequence in the evolutionary pool. Others turned into monsters when they evolved, but I broke through the carbon-based limit, becoming a god atop the pyramid of life." My father let out a loud laugh and presented a king-level core, gleaming with starlight.
he said if he were to empty the royal treasury,
He would use this marrow to reforge my golden body. Silvery thick as mercury, the liquid instantly enveloped me. Furious energy tore my cells apart. I gritted my teeth, not making a single sound of agony. Lin Wan's cold, retreating figure kept replaying in my mind. Screw it. To hell with their iron might. Today I'll forge unbeatable power with flesh and blood. The pain faded. In its place was absolute control. My eyes snapped open, my right arm transforming in an instant. Perfect dark gold scales covered my muscles. Razor-sharp claws extended from my fingertips, able to slice steel like butter. This was no monstrous, twisted mutation, but a titan's arm, full of violent grace. A casual fist made the air explode with a terrifying bang. My father watched my rebirth with satisfaction. Pointing to the distant canyon, he showed a wild, bold grin. He said a team of elite scavenger mechs had just arrived there, and told me to smash every last one to scrap with my fists. Let's go, my son. Meanwhile, the lower living quarters of the Sky Fortress reeked of pungent machine oil and cheap cologne. Lin Wan was humbly trying to please a mechanic. He had thought reporting me would earn him a premium residence, but reality gave him a harsh slap to the face. He had no connections, and could only submit himself to this man, living a life even more demeaning than a dog, constantly at others' mercy. He gazed at the thick energy shield outside the window, trying to comfort himself that at least he'd survive safely, certain that not even my bones were left outside. Yet, at that very moment, out in the endless wasteland beyond the shield, I was sprinting shirtless like a wild cheetah. The gale was like a blade, unable to even leave a mark on my pale skin. My eyes blazed with searing battle intent. At that moment, the radar detected a high-energy life form. A scavenger convoy stopped on a ridge 2 kilometers away. The captain sneered, claiming I was just a low-level infected, and sent over 2 light mechs to take me out. Engines roaring madly, 2 5-meter-tall mechs approached, wielding high-frequency chainsaw blades capable of cutting steel, slicing toward my head with a screeching roar through the air. But my sprint didn't slow down at all. Instead, I exploded off the ground, charging head-on like a cannonball. And just as the blade was less than half a meter from my head, my titan arm, covered in dark gold scales, rose up. A deafening clash of metal rang across the wasteland. Sparks erupted like a waterfall in midair. In the driver's horrified, desperate eyes, the so-called indestructible inferno blade was blocked by my bare hand. Next, my right hand crushed the special alloy, while my left arm clamped onto the mech's leg like iron pliers. A monstrous force beyond human limits surged forth. A Tenton mech was swung into the air with one hand, the cockpit instantly flooded with red warning lights. I didn't pause for a second, swinging the mech like a giant hammer. I slammed it into the other mech that was about to fire. Mech. The 2 steel giants crashed violently in midair. No energy blasts, just the purest, most primal physical collision. Both mechs were instantly twisted into piles of scrap, crashing hard onto the wasteland, leaving a massive crater behind. Everyone in the convoy stared at me like they'd seen a monster. The captain was scared out of his mind, and screamed for the main cannon to charge up. The heavy mech's chest cannon gathered up psionic energy, but my reflexes now rivaled a star beast's. I blurred into a shadow of dark gold, leaving a sonic boom in my wake. The main cannon beam grazed the afterimage, leveling half a mountain. And I've already arrived directly in front of the mech. I punched down fiercely onto its half-meter-thick composite armor. The armor was completely pierced by my fist as if it were made of paper. I grabbed the trembling captain by his collar, yanked him out like pulling up a carrot. I told him to get lost. Tell the humans, the high command of the fortress. This wasteland is now under my control. I tore out the high-grade psychic core, let it sink into the sandstorm. My father looked at the core, but said its energy wasn't nearly enough. To complete full titanization, it would cost your very essence. And the most perfect crystal core was already stolen by humans, forged into the energy center of the Sky Fortress. My father told me to tear the base of that fortress apart. I gazed at the steel giant looming beyond the sands. That was the paradise Lin Wan would do anything to get inside. I clenched my right fist. The cracking of my bones was clear in the wind. The laws of mankind and Lin Wan's hypocritical pride would soon be trampled to dust beneath my feet. Then I slipped into the fortress wearing my cloak. The lower district. I perfectly concealed the energy fluctuations of my origin sequence. To the crude scanners, I was just a drifter. The lower district was filled with smugglers and laborers at the bottom. Lin Wan was holding on to that mechanic, picking out purified water. The moment he turned around, he froze up instantly. Even though I had my hood pulled low, he would never mistake me. His face turned pale, unable to believe I was still alive. That terrifying thought consumed him in an instant. If I told everyone he murdered his boyfriend, he'd be thrown off the fortress, fed to the mutant beasts. After the fear came even more intense selfishness and malice.
He clung to the mechanic's arm,
Squeezed out a few tears, then pointed at me and shouted, "That's a high-risk, disguised infected." The mechanic's expression changed dramatically, immediately hitting the emergency comm, calling the lower district. Security squad requesting immediate purification. A piercing alarm instantly shattered the chaos of the black market. Two shock mechs, 8 meters tall, rushed into the street. Cold high-voltage railguns locked on my head. An emotionless warning blasted from the loudspeakers. I slowly set down the scrap machinery in my hands, showing no panic, nor any sign of anger. I merely turned calmly to Lin Wan behind the crowd. My gaze was so tranquil. It was like looking at an ant. That utter indifference deeply wounded his already fragile pride. He screamed frantically for them to open fire, to kill me. The shock mech's railguns finished charging instantly. Eerie blue arcs of electricity snapped out like vipers. I didn't activate my Titan arm, didn't even remove my cloak, just slowly lifted my left hand, and with a flick in midair, an overwhelming shockwave blasted out clear to the eye. The high-voltage arc shattered against an absolute vacuum barrier. Not even the corner of my clothes was rustled. The mech enforcers stood there, dumbfounded, unable to believe it. I took a step forward. The alloy ground cracked beneath my feet, spreading a spiderweb of fissures over 10 meters wide. The pressure from the top of the food chain made the mechs wail. I said, "Humans always like to cover up their weakness with scraps of metal." I raised my head, my hood sliding off to reveal a cold face. Dark golden scales flickered beneath my right sleeve. "Since you see me as an unforgivable monster, I'll show you what a real catastrophe is." Right then, a blood-red emergency alarm lit up over the inner city. The Silver-class Mecha Knights were authorized to deploy fully armed. Those guys were the elite Silver-class Mecha Knights of the inner city, each one equipped with the latest psychic lightsaber, the kind of big shots you'd never even see in the lower district. Now they swarmed out of the inner city, preparing for the fight of their lives. All 10 units, silver killing machines, boxed me in tight. The lead knight commander used a haughty tone. "Cold warning." He ordered me to kneel and hand over my mutated crystal core right now. Lin Wan watched everything from afar, so excited he was shaking all over. He clung crazily to the mechanic Zhao's arm and screamed, saying I was dead for sure this time, that I'd be obliterated. But he had no idea. I looked at these arrogant mechs, my heart surging with uncontrollable excitement and ecstasy. The origin sequence in me howled wildly, craving to tear these fake steel toys apart. I didn't waste a word. My right arm instantly transformed into that of a beast. Dark golden scales, in the strong light, gleaming with the aura of death. The Knight Commander roared in anger, ordering everyone to attack with lethal force. 10 psychic lightsabers, ice blue, slashed down together. Heat that could vaporize the entire street burst forth in an instant. But against the absolute might of the origin sequence's body, that so-called high-tech was nothing short of a laughable joke. I exploded off the ground, shattering the alloy foundation in a 100-meter radius. Moving like I'd teleported, I appeared right in front of a mech, ignoring even its mountain-slicing psychic lightsaber. My dark gold claws punched straight through its chest. I tore out, the psychic core glowing blue inside. The powerless silver mech collapsed with a thunderous crash like scrap metal. The Knight Commander and all his men were stunned, speechless. The armor they were so proud of was like paper before me. I didn't give them a second to recover from the terror. I became a prehistoric beast slaughtering a flock of sheep. One punch caved in a mech's head. One kick broke another's load-bearing leg. In barely over half a minute, that mighty Knight Order had turned into a field of scrap. The Knight Commander, terrified, pulled the controls, frantically trying to escape back inside the city, only to be smashed by my dive. As I crushed the cockpit under my foot, I looked off into the distance from above, at the now utterly broken Lin Wan. The hope that had just lit up in his eyes was instantly swallowed by the abyss. That usually arrogant mechanic Zhao finally realized what was happening. He spun around and slapped Lin Wan's pale face hard.
He cursed furiously,
shouting that Lin Wan had provoked a monster even the inner city couldn't handle. Lin Wan collapsed in despair amid the oily wreckage, staring at me as if at a real god, filled with fear. As for me, the regret of such an ant no longer interested me at all. I raised my head and looked at that incredibly thick energy shield above the inner city. Beneath that luxurious inner city, I could feel it clearly. A massive heart was beating.
That
Was the energy center of the entire sky fortress. The ancient beast king-class crystal core my father sent me for. I took a deep breath, the dark gold scales of my right arm flaring with light, gathering all my strength into my titan arm, facing up to that so-called absolutely unbreakable energy shield. I threw a punch that could tear the heavens apart. With a sound that shattered everyone's eardrums, a thundering explosion resounded. That shield, which had protected mankind's elite for decades, now under my fist, was webbed with cracks. The whole sky fortress trembled violently. At the very top, the Supreme Commander stared at the monitor, cold all over. They just couldn't figure out how some outcast drifter could unleash power rivaling that of a king-class star beast. With a crisp cracking sound, the shield shattered completely, stepping over the wreckage of mechs. I walked into the inner city one step at a time. All those normally high and mighty tycoons and nobles, at this moment, fleeing and screaming madly, just like the refugees from the lower district. I ignored them, heading straight toward the power core. The gate to the power chamber was forged from several hundred tons of superalloy. But in front of my titan arm, it was as fragile as paper. I shoved both hands into the door seam. With a terrifying roar, I forcibly ripped open the fortress's strongest gate, tearing it apart with my bare hands. Behind the gate was an immense abyssal reaction chamber, a dark red crystal core, as large as a mountain, suspended in midair. That was the energy source of the entire sky dome, a king-class heart. Just by getting close, I could feel a destructive aura. The cells in my body trembled wildly, like parched earth finally meeting rain. I leapt into the air without hesitation and smashed the extraction device with a single punch, directly placing my right hand onto that massive heart. The devouring instinct of the origin sequence was fully activated in an instant. The purest essence energy of the king-class behemoth burst forth like a breached dam, flooding from my right arm into every corner of my body. This searing pain was 100 times stronger than when I first awakened, but I just gritted my teeth and withstood this inhuman torment. I won the purest power under the heavens to reshape the body of a god. As I devoured, the lights of the entire fortress began to flicker violently. The once blue energy shields went out instantly as the power failed. Without the protection of the shield, the sky dome was fully exposed in the wasteland. From the distant wastelands came the greedy howls of countless mutant beasts. The lower district instantly plunged into chaos even more hopeless than hell. Lin Wan stared at the extinguished lights around her, and at the flood of beasts rushing in, letting out the most desperate, anguished scream of her life. He finally understood the steel fortress he clung to for survival, in the face of true power, wasn't even a peaceful grave. But inside the power chamber, I was already undergoing a vital transformation. Dark gold scales began spreading along my right arm and quickly covered my entire body. My bones reshaped themselves, and my muscles exploded with metallic booms. My original human form was evolving rapidly toward that of an ancient titan. Just as my body was about to complete its full beast transformation, the dome of the power chamber was suddenly torn open by a terrifying force. A 30-meter tall, ultimate mech, dark gold from head to toe, descended.
This
Was the Skydome Lord's exclusive Doomsday Judgment mech. The Lord sat in the cockpit, roaring with terror and venom. He called me a lowly refugee and dared me to destroy the heart of his fortress. He activated the hatch on his mech's chest, revealing the Spike Star cannon supposedly strong enough to pierce the Earth's core. A blinding red light turned the entire power chamber into a scene from the apocalypse. But at that moment, I slowly opened my eyes, which shone with golden light, my whole body clad in dark gold titan scales. Unleashing a godlike pressure, I casually crushed the now drained King's Star and its remains, facing that cannon capable of leveling mountains. I let out a cold laugh. I didn't dodge. Instead, I charged straight toward the cannon. If you want to play, I'll shatter your dreams of rulership along with you. The dark gold scales covering my body unleashed godlike pressure. So what if it's a 30-meter tall judgment mech? Today I'm going to crush you, high and mighty Lord, and utterly destroy your hypocritical reign. A violent surge of energy instantly engulfed me. The Lord laughed wildly in the cockpit. He shouted that no one could withstand a point-blank shot from the Starbreaker cannon. Even if I were a monster that devoured the king's galaxy, I'd still die before overwhelming power and technology. But his laughter was cut short in the next instant. Because at the center of that blazing red energy storm, a massive dark gold hand blotted out the sky. That hand seemed to break the very bonds of space and seized the scorching barrel of the Starbreaker cannon. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The Lord let out a shrill, terrified scream. The mech's warning system instantly failed across the board. My titan-sized, godlike figure stepped into the light. My original human form had completely transformed, now towering at a terrifying 10 meters tall, like a true giant. My body was covered with flawless dark gold armor, each scale shimmering with the luster of a black hole. Origin sequence, Stage 2. Titan's sovereign body perfected at last. A little force from me, and the so-called indestructible cannon barrel crumpled like a plastic straw. I squeezed it straight into scrap metal. Blinding electric sparks flickered wildly at the mech's chest. The Lord desperately worked the escape lever in a panic, but I gave him no chance to cling to life. My dark gold giant hand, trailing a supersonic shockwave, slammed fiercely into the chest armor of the Judgment mech, with a metal-twisting shriek that made your teeth ache. This mech, the symbol of human power, was punched straight through the chest by me. I grabbed the Lord, cowering in the main cockpit, and yanked him out like a chick from the rubble. His once glorious uniform soaked in oil and blood. Now he struggled like a broken-backed dog in my grasp, crying and begging me to spare his pitiful life, promising me the entire Skydome fortress, offering all its wealth and women. I stared at his face, warped by power and disgust, feeling only endless cold and contempt from on high. I told him, "You parasites leeching off our energy today will pay the price for a decade of crimes." I clenched my fist. Amid his pig-like shrieks, this supreme tyrant, ruling Skydome for 10 years, was crushed into a bloody mist like a tomato. His ridiculous dreams of rulership evaporated. With the Lord's fall and the total loss of shields, the moving fortress fell into utter despair. Dreadful yellow sand swirled all over the distant wastelands. Tens of thousands of mutant beasts, scenting blood, surged into the lower district like a black tide. The once mighty steel walls now stood uselessly. The underclass and smugglers wailed in despair, and Lin Wan collapsed at a sewer entrance, her whole body covered in mud and foul monster blood. That mechanic Xiao who promised to protect her had shoved her out to the beasts as soon as the hordes broke in, and rode off alone on a hover bike to escape. Lin Wan watched in terror as a few red-eyed boar beasts closed in, scrambling backwards in panic, leaving stink-stained trails on the ground, clawing at her hair frantically, on the verge of total breakdown. Why is this happening? She had made it into the safe zone, having secured her peace at the cost of my body. But in less than half a day, heaven had turned to hell. Just as a boar beast was about to smash her with its hoof, the sky suddenly darkened, as if a mountain pressed down from above. My 10-meter titan form leapt from the ruins, with a thunderous crash crushing those boar beasts to pulp. The shockwave wiped out the monsters nearby. Lin Wan stared in awe at my divine dark gold back. That familiar figure made her recognize me in an instant. "Lu Yuan, is that you? You came to save me, didn't you?" He lunged at me like a drowning man grabbing at a lifeline. He shamelessly wrapped his arms around my calf. He began to wail uncontrollably. He said he was wrong. He claimed he was forced by the rules and had no other choice. He said he had always loved me, begged me to take him away. As long as I forgave him, he'd be willing to do anything. I lowered my head, looking down at him with eyes full of contempt, as if he were garbage. The origin sequence bestowed on me not only power, but also divinity. Faced with a despicable soul willing to sell out everything just to survive, I didn't even have the interest to kill him myself. I slowly raised my leg and kicked him away like he was a stinking rock. I said, "Weren't you always obsessed with the law of human survival? Then enjoy yourself here on this wasteland. I felt like just looking at him was dirtying my own eyes. I ignored his desperate, broken-hearted screams of despair. Turning around, I strode toward the outer wilds of the fortress. Behind me, countless mutant beasts swarmed in to tear him apart. From then on, this woman was less than dust in my life. The moment I stepped out from the wreckage of the Sky Dome, the whole land trembled with a surge of wild energy. A shockwave, dozens of kilometers long, appeared on the horizon. My old man transformed into a 100-meter-tall giant white tiger, led an army of tens of thousands, all terrifying high-level star beasts at minimum. But when they saw my 10-meter-high dark gold titan form, they all instinctively prostrated themselves, trembling to their very cores. This was the primal submission of lesser beings to the divine sequence. My old man's massive white fox body stopped in front of me. His eyes in the blazing thickets shimmered with fanatical pride. He spoke to me telepathically, his voice shaking with excitement. "Good boy. I always knew you'd make the sky tremble. Not only did you drain the Wangji River, you achieved titanization too.
Now,
Even those old freaks hiding in central Eden City would have to bow and take a beating from you." I restrained the violent energy on my body, returning to human size. Though I looked normal, I could still feel the destructive power within me. I looked at my old man and asked what Central Eden City really was. He withdrew his wild grin, his gaze turning grim like never before.
he said,
The Sky Dome is nothing but a junkyard abandoned by the conglomerates. The real upper crust, and those who know the truth about the alien spores, have long since used the ruins to build a floating divine city in the stratosphere. That's Central Eden City, a self-proclaimed divine forbidden zone. They've stolen 90% of Earth's ancient crystal cores. Even now, they're conducting terrifying experiments to harness higher dimensional will. And the perfection I've awakened within me, as a level 1 origin sequence, is exactly what those madmen and their scientists dream of dissecting. If they detect the energy wave from the Sky Dome's destruction, judgment from Eden City, and the Angel Legion will undoubtedly come after us in force. As I listened to my old man, I felt not even a shred of fear. Instead, the fighting spirit I'd just calmed down flared like a volcano. For the past 10 years, my old man and I survived in the wasteland like dogs, slandered by the corrupt conglomerates, turned into damned mutant monsters. Now, with divine power in hand, how could I be content ruling over ruins? I clenched my dark gold fist, strong enough to crush mechs with ease, a cold smirk curling my lips, so chilling it seemed to drop the nearby temperature, since they call themselves gods, and see us as pitiful insects. Then I'll rise to the stratosphere myself, and smash their divine throne to pieces. My old man saw the madness burning in my eyes, then laughed wildly to the sky. He said, "That's my son, Lu Zhanshan. If you're gonna do it, take on the whole damn world." His giant tiger paw suddenly slammed deep beneath the Sky Dome. In the depths of the Earth's core, he actually dug up an entire metal vault. It was a ship, one even in this post-apocalyptic era, could only be called miraculous. My old man said, this was a treasure he fought for his life to get 10 years ago. As long as we have enough high-grade crystal cores to power this battleship, we could break through the atmosphere's barrier and take the fight right to Eden City's doorstep. I looked at that terrifying war behemoth shining with a deep glow, and, without hesitation, tossed all the mech cores I'd hunted into the power chamber. But that was far from enough to power this titan that slumbered for countless eras. My old man turned his tiger head and looked toward the farthest depths of the wasteland. He said, in the far north, there lies a terrifying abyssal rift. There lurks a Calamity-class space beast that's lived for over 1,000 years. If we could dig out its destruction crystal core, the battleship would be reborn. But that monster, my old man wouldn't dare approach even at his peak. Its freezing breath could instantly turn an entire heavy mech squad to ice. I didn't say a word, just stared coldly at the death zone forever shrouded by snow and wind. For me now, there's no monster a punch can't shatter. I leapt onto my old man's expansive, plaza-sized snowy white tiger back, and led the tens of thousands of terrifying beasts behind me, on a grand march toward the far northern abyss. Every human along the way, every scavenger convoy, every mini-mobile fortress, was so terrified they pissed their pants on the spot, frantically calling for help over the public channels. A few days later, our army finally stepped into the absolute zero zone of the far north. The air here was so cold steel turned brittle as glass in an instant. The blizzard howled everywhere, mixed with razor-sharp blasts of ice capable of slicing through flesh with ease. Even the thick-skinned high-level star beasts collapsed, unable to endure. I immediately activated a partial origin transformation, Titan body shielding me from the elements. Dark gold scales amid the snow radiated scorching light, defending against the cold. Just as we approached the giant frozen abyss at the core, a clear line of footprints appeared ahead, atop the snowfield. In a neat row, my old man's colossal body stopped dead, emitting a deep warning tiger's roar.
He said these tracks didn't belong to any mutant beast.
But to something of very advanced technology. I looked carefully, noticing the footprints' edges were unnaturally precise, obviously left by some sort of anti-gravity humanoid armor. The marks it left behind. Could it be someone from Central Eden City had already found this calamity beast ahead of us? Just as this wary thought flashed through my mind, the deep snow ahead suddenly rang with a blood-curdling scream. From within the snowstorm up ahead came a shrill flying man's cry. Immediately after, a pillar of blue energy, thick as a mountain, shot into the sky, blasting a massive hole through 10,000-year-old ice clouds above the abyss, and punched a vast hole through the clouds. That was no ordinary mech cannon. Its destructive power was at least 10 times stronger than even the City Lord's Spire cannon. By far. My old man immediately hid his massive form behind a giant iceberg. I silently crept toward the direction of that energy blast, moving without making a sound. When I crawled to the rim of the abyss and looked down at the scene inside, even with my awakened divine sequence, I couldn't help but gasp. At the bottom of the pit, that beast, as large as 2 aircraft carriers, was at this moment tightly pinned to the ground by several holy white energy chains. Immovably bound, its body was covered in deep, bone-exposing wounds. Rivers of blue blood flowed everywhere.
And
The one who had this 1,000-year-old beast even my old man feared underfoot was actually an unbelievably beautiful silver-haired woman, wearing only a thin white trench coat. He wasn't piloting any, not even the most basic wasteland mech. Yet he floated in midair, more than a dozen meters above the ground, as if a god had descended. Behind him, unfolded, 6 pairs of wings made entirely of higher dimensional psionic light. This was simply exactly like the 6-winged angels described in human mythology. Identical. He looked down coldly at the star beast below, struggling wildly in defiance. He reached out a slender, pale, bloodless finger and gave a gentle tap. That beast's skull, said to be indestructible, was pierced instantly, as easily as cutting through tofu. He forcibly extracted a chilling, destructive, icy blue crystal core from the beast. I stared at this mysterious silver-haired woman who had just slaughtered a calamity behemoth barehanded. The origin sequence within me suddenly sent out the strongest warning of madness I had ever felt. It was an extreme, primal reaction to an enemy capable of threatening my life, a dire instinctual response. As I was getting ready to retreat discreetly and discuss a tactic with my father, the 6-winged woman in midair abruptly turned her head in a jarring motion. Her ice-blue pupils, devoid of any human emotion, locked onto my position. Across the howling wind and a vast distance, a cold mechanical voice thundered through my mind. Found you. Ultimate Origin Type 001, the perfect experimental subject. That frigid voice carried some kind of psychic force. I felt a violent tremor deep in my brain. But the origin sequence within me instantly erupted in a blast of dark gold energy, shattering this mental intrusion in an instant. My father, in his massive white tiger form, suddenly lunged forward a step. A storm of ferocious pressure dispelled the swirling snow around us. My father let out a deafening warning roar, fixing his tiger's gaze firmly on the silver-haired woman floating in midair. But the 6-winged angel didn't even register my father's show of force. The wings of light on his back just fluttered slightly. He vanished from that spot in an instant, leaving only a spatial afterimage. Even though my neural reflexes had reached the limit for carbon-based life forms, all I could catch was a faint ripple in the air. A sense of imminent danger made me instantly activate the Titan Overlord body, Stage 2. Dark gold scales spread over every inch of my skin in an instant. Just as my protective scales finished forming, a pale hand suddenly pressed against my chest without warning. There was no thunderous explosion, nor any dazzling light effects, just a pure, extreme burst of higher dimensional energy. My so-called invincible Titan body let out a muffled grunt. It was like being struck by a meteor, sending me hurtling backward. I crashed hard into a nearly unbreakable, ancient glacier behind me. The thick dark ice shattered over a wide area, turning into a whirlwind of ice shavings. Using the rebound, I managed to get back on my feet among the ruins. My father, shocked and furious, swung his giant tiger paw down from midair. A golden flow of metal energy turned into a barrage of blades blocking her retreat. A flash of complex data passed through the icy blue eyes of the woman. Space around her began to twist in a bizarre manner. My father's attack, powerful enough to shatter a heavy fortress, slid aside harmlessly. Several towering ice peaks nearby were leveled in an instant by the shockwave. Is this the power possessed by the adjudication angel of Central Eden City? Such terrifying mastery of space and energy. It defies all logic.
But I
Absolutely refuse to retreat before a false god who looks down on us. I gathered my strength in my legs, shattering the ice beneath me, and shot forward like lightning. I focused all the energy of the origin sequence into my right arm, slamming it hard into her shield. Just as I thought she couldn't block my attack and was about to avoid the tip of her spear, the 6 wings of light on her back suddenly turned into 6 massive chains of light. Piercing the void, they instantly bound my father's massive limbs in place. He let out a furious roar, struggling desperately but unable to move an inch. The woman's icy, merciless gaze locked onto my position once more. You're nothing more than an unfinished, low-grade energy vessel. In her hand, a deadly higher dimensional lightsaber condensed out of thin air. With an aura that could cut through anything, she brought it down straight at my head. A crushing sense of danger forced me to twist my body, dodging the vital spot. The lightsaber scraped past my shoulder, throwing off a spray of blinding sparks. Even with Titan scales, it left a deep white gash in my armor, fighting back the searing pain. I reached out with my left hand and gripped the edge of the lightsaber, manually activating the devouring instinct of the origin sequence once more. To my shock, I actually began to forcibly absorb the psionic energy of the lightsaber. For the first time, a look of surprise flashed in the woman's usually emotionless eyes. She clearly didn't expect this experiment subject of hers could devour her power. While she was momentarily stunned, my dark gold claws shot for her face. But my true target was the Calamity Behemoth's crystal core she held, changing trajectory midair. My claws traced an unpredictable arc and snatched away the icy blue core gleaming with destruction. Seized it in an instant. Deprived of her core, the woman retreated quickly, stabilizing herself in midair. Data streams of blue in her eyes began flashing at a frenzied speed. She stared at me coldly and said, "Do you really think you can escape like this?" The words barely finished when the wings of light on her back erupted into wild flames. In the sky over the farthest northern abyss, an enormous phantom city appeared. That was Central Eden City, the ultimate spatial energy projection. Countless, devastating beams of light gathered in the city's shadow. My father broke free of the chains with all his strength and roared for me to take the core and run. He transformed into a gigantic white shield, blocking my escape route. I didn't dare hesitate for a second, clutching the icy core as I dashed away at full speed. Behind me, a world-shattering energy storm exploded. Countless glaciers under the indiscriminate bombardment of the light beams vaporized instantly. We relied on sheer strength and forced our way out of the center of the explosion. When we returned to the spot where the ancient battleship lay dormant, our whole bodies were battered and bruised. We were both a mess, but at least we hadn't suffered any irreversible injuries. My father's once snow-white fur was now partially scorched. He gritted his teeth and cursed those maniacs for transforming themselves into terminals. I didn't hesitate to take that calamity core and threw it into the battleship's reactor. Combined with the previously collected core energy, it finally reached the activation threshold. A deep humming sound slowly echoed from the depths of the battleship's metal core, as if an ancient beast, asleep for countless eons, was awakening. On the surface armor of the battleship, mystical bluish lines began to glow. Massive anti-gravity thrust lifted the battleship slowly out of the ice. Dad stood in the spacious command room. A frenetic light glinted in his eyes. Target, the stratosphere. Today we're going to completely flatten that divine city. The battleship became a dazzling streak of light, piercing the everlasting icy clouds. Heading above Earth's atmosphere, rushing at an unbelievable speed, the battleship's internal gravity simulation system was operating perfectly. We kept our eyes fixed on the screen, watching the stratosphere coordinates get closer. The true face of Eden City finally appeared above the clouds. It was a magnificent giant city built entirely from crystals and special alloys, constructed with grandeur, surrounded by countless heavy defensive fortresses like satellites. Just as I thought the battleship could smoothly cloak itself and slip through the defenses, the main control screen of the battleship suddenly flickered twice and turned blood red. A huge, chilling human face appeared eerily on the screen. That face was identical to the six-winged angel we encountered earlier. He used a cold, emotionless mechanical synthetic voice to announce the extermination of intruders. All the battleship's weapon systems and shields suddenly ceased functioning completely. Not only that, the temperature of the reactor started rising abnormally fast. Someone forcibly took over the highest control remotely from outside, seized ultimate command authority. Dad anxiously slammed the control panel, trying to cut off external connections. But it was futile. I took a deep breath, pressed my scaled-covered right hand heavily on the main console. Dark golden origin energy surged crazily through my arm into the battleship's systems. I tapped into the highest dimensional life magnetic field to forcibly override the opponent's AI code. Two completely different forces are fiercely clashing within the warship's neural network. The warship violently shakes in the stratosphere, as if it could disintegrate in midair at any moment. I grit my teeth tightly, pushing the computational power of the origin sequence to its limit. Finally, after an extremely dazzling burst of internal electrical sparks, that bizarre human face let out a piercing, shrill electronic wail. The screen returned to the eerie blue glow indicating a safe state. I successfully regained control. But the warship's position was completely exposed. The outer defensive bastions of Eden City immediately went to full battle readiness. Dense anti-air energy matrices locked onto the airspace where we were. Tens of thousands of annihilation beams wove into a seamless net of death.
Dad made a split-second decision,
taking manual control of the warship's physical driving system himself. The massive ancient warship in Dad's hands was like a nimble eel, weaving through the dense gaps between the beams, making all sorts of physically impossible evasive maneuvers. I, on the other hand, focused all my attention on controlling the main cannon, launching precise counterattacks. Ghostly blue, high-energy shells struck the outer defensive nodes with pinpoint accuracy. One after another, brilliant and deadly energy sparks exploded across the sky. This was not only a contest of technology, but also a pure clash of energy. We pressed forward under the barrage of fire, tearing open the nearly impenetrable defense net with brute force, trailing thick black smoke. The warship smashed straight through Eden City's outer shields and crashed heavily at the edge of the divine city, onto a massive crystal airport plaza. The terrifying physical impact instantly crushed countless exquisite floating buildings. The warped hatch of the warship crashed down with a thunderous roar, and I stepped out with heavy steps, my towering titan form emitting a chilling sense of oppression in the sunlight. Dad instantly transformed into a 100-meter white tiger, letting out a thunderous, earth-shaking roar, announcing the formal arrival of the rebels from the wastelands. In this forbidden zone of the gods, around the plaza, swarms of silver-white divine city guards quickly surrounded us. They wore advanced high-tech battle armor, wielding high-frequency psionic weapons. But in the face of power on our level, they were utterly defenseless. With a casual punch, I unleashed a terrifying shockwave, sending hundreds of guards flying, while Dad rampaged as if no one could stop him. Each powerful swing of his massive tiger claws flattened entire squads of elite armored soldiers, smashing them into heaps of scrap metal right on the spot. We followed the wide crystal main avenue of the city center, advancing toward the heart of the city. The bizarre sights we encountered along the way shocked me to my core. This prosperous city showed not a single trace of natural life. All the plants and landscapes were made of machinery and solidified energy. Even the fleeing city civilians looked completely expressionless, utterly blank and dazed. I noticed that on the backs of their heads was a tube connecting to the cloud, transmitting energy. This place wasn't some holy sanctuary at all, but a massive, hypocritical farm, just as I thought we could press on in one decisive charge and break into the inner city. The grand buildings along the Crystal Avenue suddenly began to warp in an incredibly strange way, and hundreds of semi-organic machines, shaped like hounds, burst out. These creatures had no eyes on their heads, only a single, enormous, glowing red eyeball. That eyeball radiated a sickening, dark red, corrosive energy glow. With a swipe of his claw, Dad easily smashed the foremost mechanical hound. But the shattered body of that hound erupted in a dense cloud of green toxic gas. Dad accidentally inhaled the poison, and his mighty body suddenly stumbled. His expression changed dramatically, saying the toxic cloud could dissolve high-dimensional spiritual energy. "Don't touch me," he warned, immediately deploying the origin sequence's energy barrier to isolate the poisonous gas. But those mechanical hounds never engaged us directly, instead charging at us madly and self-destructing just outside the shield. The green poison cloud grew denser and denser, completely enveloping the entire street. I could clearly sense the energy shield being rapidly corroded, hissing and sizzling. If this went on, we would eventually be devoured by this bizarre poison. My eyes turned cold, and I immediately triggered the third advanced form of the Titan's power. The previously dark golden scales ignited with a black fire exuding pure destruction. This was the origin sequence's current highest destructive power under my control. The flames of destruction. With both fists, I slammed heavily into the ground, sending an overwhelming wave of black flames outward. Wherever the black fire spread, the green poison cloud was instantly incinerated until nothing remained. Mechanical hounds trying to self-destruct nearby were also instantly reduced to ashes by the searing heat. Once the poison cleared away, the gigantic energy gate to the inner city finally became clearly visible. I strode up to the gate, preparing to force it open with sheer strength. Just as my dark gold fist was about to touch the energy gate, the surface of the gate suddenly rippled, with waves like water. A man in an ornate white robe trimmed with gold thread stepped out from the ripples. He wore an exquisite golden mask that covered the upper half of his face, leaving only his lips uncovered. His lips twisted into a deeply unsettling smile, peeking out from under the mask. He looked at me and clapped his hands softly. "As expected from the perfect one," he said. His voice was strangely magnetic, but it made me feel intensely threatened. "Cut the theatrics," I said coldly. "Today is the end of your Eden City." The masked man shook his head and said with contempt, "You have no idea what the real world is."
He casually snapped his fingers.
And the energy gate behind him slowly opened to both sides. The shocking sight behind the gate made both Dad and me stop in our tracks. It was an enormous and seemingly bottomless transparent incubation chamber array. Inside, suspended in dense rows, were countless human clones that looked exactly alike. And the faces of all those clones were identical to mine. Their eyes were tightly shut, their pale bodies covered in all sorts of extraction tubes. The masked man spread his arms wide, grinning madly as if presenting a great work of art. Welcome back to your birthplace. My proudest ultimate vessel? What the hell is going on? Am I not Dad's biological son? I whipped around and looked at Dad, hoping he would give me an immediate explanation. Even Dad's massive white tiger form was now trembling ever so slightly, and there was a flash of long-buried pain behind those golden eyes of his. Zhao Yuan, it's a long story, but I, Lu Zantian, am indeed your father. The masked man laughed loudly, mercilessly cutting off Dad's words. He just stole a genetic embryo from the lab.
He really sees himself as a father.
You are nothing more than a disposable product we cultivated using fragments of ancient gods' genes for consumption. Your existence is solely for enduring the descent of supreme higher dimensional will. Hearing these reality-shattering words, I felt my mind roll violently. The 10 years of struggling on the harsh wasteland, and the father-son bond that kept us alive. Was it all along just an elaborate experiment and a lie? The origin energy within me, because of intense emotional turmoil, started to surge out of control. Just when I thought I was about to reach the verge of total mental collapse, my dad suddenly let out a tremor, a furious and grief-stricken roar shaking the dome of God City. His massive body actually ignited a blinding, radiant white source flame. He threw everything aside and charged at the arrogant man wearing the golden mask. No one can deny the bond we shared over these 10 years on the wasteland.
Die.
You hypocrites who treat life like nothing. Disgusting cultists. This strike, as my dad burns his life potential, is so terrifyingly powerful it's beyond imagination. Pure Genjin energy, transformed into an even larger, denser phantom tiger, opening a massive maw big enough to devour a battleship, trying to smash both the masked man and the gate. The masked man let out a cold sneer, standing in place with no intent to dodge at all. Suddenly, in the matrix of incubators behind him, thousands of eerie red lights lit up. Hundreds of clones of mine opened their eyes all at once at this moment. They actually, simultaneously, unleashed punches eerily similar to mine, dark gold in color. Hundreds of waves of fake Titan power merged into a terrifying river of energy, colliding with Dad's white tiger phantom, midair above the plaza with tremendous force. The brilliance was blinding to the extreme, making the city's surveillance system enter a brief blind spot. The intense energy explosion sent Dad and me flying out violently at the same time. Dad fell heavily onto the crystal ground. His breath became extremely weak. That layer of majestic white hair on him had already lost its original luster. I rushed over, injecting pure origin energy into his body to stabilize his injuries. Dad looked at me and smiled bitterly, saying, "Zhao Yuan, don't listen to that guy's nonsense. What does bloodline even matter? You are the only child I, Lu Zhangshan, have ever had in this life." Seeing Dad's weak yet determined state, the confusion in my heart vanished instantly. Replacing it was an endless fire of rage, 100 times more violent than before. I don't care who I was made by, or what kind of bullshit high-dimensional energy vessel I am. I only know who, in these 10 years on this cruel wasteland, protected me with his life as I grew up. I slowly stood up, staring straight at that masked man who was still acting superior. The black flames of destruction on my body turned incandescent because of my extreme rage. I looked at him and said each word clearly. No matter what disgusting descent project you have, today I'm going to smash this place until not a single architectural crystal is left standing. Seeing this, the masked man finally had a trace of imperceptible solemnity flash through his eyes. He coldly ordered, "Since the defect is out of control, then physically destroy it immediately." With his command, those hundreds and thousands of clones rushed out like zombies. Although they had no independent thought, their combat instincts were set to be extremely terrifying. Each one possessed physical strength equivalent to my first stage of titanification. I let out a long roar that pierced the sky, transforming into a dark gold invincible god of war. Facing the clone army that flooded in like a black tide, I charged straight into them. No fancy energy moves, only the purest physical collisions. I shattered a clone's defensive armor with one punch, sending him flying back violently. I grabbed another clone's arm with a backhand, swinging him around and smashing him into the crowd. Though they had the same face as mine, I felt no mercy in my heart, because they were just a bunch of Cold War consumables with their souls erased. But I soon discovered that these clones could actually share tactical vision through a network. Their attacks were perfectly coordinated, gradually forcing me into a difficult defensive struggle. Under continuous heavy blows, my titan scales began to show fine cracks. The incandescent flames also grew dim because of the massive energy consumption. Becoming somewhat faint, the masked man stood on his high throne, watching all this with an extremely smug sneer. Just when I thought I had no choice but to detonate the origin core and take them down with me, the artificial sky above Eden City was suddenly torn open by a massive rift. A black starship, 10 times larger than our warship, descended by force from the bottom of the starship. Without warning, a blinding deep purple beam was projected. The beam was like a sword of the gods, precisely enveloping the area where I and the clones were. The moment the clones touched the purple light, they dissolved into a flurry of light points, without any room for struggle or resistance. They were completely erased on a physical level. I felt an extremely gentle, yet irresistible pulling force, slowly lifting me up. A strange female voice, full of supreme majesty, and extremely heroic, echoed over the city. I want to see who in this universe dares touch the child of hope that our Starsea resistance has been searching for. Seeing the sky-blotting black starship, the masked man's face turned pale instantly. He screamed in terror, "The Starsea resistance? How could you possibly find this place?" No one on the starship answered. There was only the terrifying hum of the main cannon charging frantically. A world-destroying beam of pure white light blasted straight toward Eden City's central command tower. It was a dimensionality reduction strike more terrifying than the Skyark Lord's star-shattering cannon. A massive energy ring exploded in the city center, overturning countless aerial fortresses. Before the masked man could even scream, he was completely engulfed by the intense light. I took the chance to carry my badly injured dad, who had reverted to human form, and flew into the starship along the purple beam. The level of technology inside the black starship completely exceeded the limits of my knowledge. A woman in a tight black combat suit, with short, sharp red hair, walked up to me. She looked at me with a look that was extremely complex and filled with a sense of relieved gratification. Let me introduce myself. I am the Supreme Commander of the Resistance's 7th Fleet, Hong Lian. To find you the perfect origin vessel we have been searching for 10 whole years. She led me through the metal corridors to a newly built hyperdimensional medical restoration chamber, placing my unconscious dad into a restoration fluid filled with green life essence. Then she turned to look at me and told me the truth in an extremely serious tone. Those people in Eden City who call themselves gods are just puppets being manipulated. The true mastermind is a high-dimensional crystal parasitic life form, hidden on the dark side of the moon. They use Eden City to collect Earth's spiritual energy, preparing to completely purify the entire planet. And the perfect origin sequence awakened within you is the only key that can end them. Listening to the shocking secrets Hong Lian told, I felt like I was being pulled into a much larger vortex. But I didn't have any thought of backing down. Tightly clenching my dark gold fists, I stared into her eyes and said, "No matter where the real enemy is, I will smash them." Hong Lian nodded in appreciation, saying, "Before that, you need to undergo real, systematic training. Your origin sequence is currently running on pure instinct, and you've developed less than 10% of its potential.
Next.
I'll take you to the Resistance's secret base for Hell-level special training." The black starship, above the burning ruins of Eden City, slowly turned its massive bow. The engines spewed out blue spatial rifts, as the light instantly became a streak of light blasting out of the atmosphere, pointing toward the boundless, filled with countless unknowns, and the terrifying dangers of the deep reaches of the universe. The black starship's warp engine emitted a low hum. The starlight outside the front window was stretched into brilliant bands of light. I stood before the giant holographic star map in the main control room, staying silent. Hong Lian walked over to me and handed me a glass of green nutrient solution. She said, "This is a recovery potion extracted from pure stellar energy." I took the glass and downed it in one gulp, feeling the surge of power. After the starship had traveled at superluminal speeds for who knows how long, it finally decelerated and hovered deep within a chaotic asteroid belt. The meteors here exhibited an eerie dark purple metallic luster. Hong Lane, you're the largest shattered asteroid. They said we've arrived. The front end of the starship fired a complex unlocking beam. It swept across the surface of the asteroid. The asteroid, which seemed completely lifeless, started slowly splitting open on both sides, revealing inside a massive underground steel port. Countless uniquely designed warships were shuttling in out of the new port. This is the Rebel Army, the core headquarters they've hidden for hundreds of years. I followed Crimson Lotus off the starship, stepping onto the hard alloy deck. The rebel soldiers around me were all looking at me with awe. They whispered among themselves, saying I was the perfect origin carrier. I ignored these looks and walked straight toward the medical area. Dad was still asleep inside the repair pod. I had to make sure he was safe. Crimson Lotus seemed to read my mind and told me not to worry.
He said,
Dad's vital signs are completely stable now. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to ask about the special training, the piercing sound of the highest level red alert suddenly echoed throughout the port. Just when I thought this hidden base was absolutely safe, a young soldier guiding me suddenly screamed. The surface of his skin started crystallizing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sharp dark blue crystals were erupting from his veins. The surrounding soldiers hurriedly backed away in fear, raising their energy guns. Crimson Lotus's expression changed dramatically, yelling that it was a high-frequency resonance of the higher dimensional crystal parasite. He drew the pulse lightsaber from his waist, getting ready to end the soldier's suffering. I grabbed his wrist and said, "Wait, I might be able to save him." Without any hesitation, I activated the first stage of Titan Overbody. Dark golden scales covered the palm of my right hand. I grabbed the soldier by his crystallizing shoulder. The devouring instinct of the origin sequence was instantly pushed to the limit by me. An overwhelming force of suction rushed into his body, filling every limb and bone. Those dark blue crystals that were growing uncontrollably actually stopped spreading. The higher dimensional parasitic energy was forcibly stripped away from his body, along my arm, and absorbed into the energy core in my chest. The warrior collapsed painfully to the ground, gasping heavily for air. Although he lost half an arm, at least his life was spared. Hong Lian looked at me, seeing how casually I dissolved the mortal crystal infection, and his eyes blazed with unprecedented fanaticism and a light full of hope. He said, "You are indeed our ultimate trump card against the moon's dark side. That resonance just now means the enemy has already sensed your presence. They are using higher dimensional broadcasting, attempting to locate our position. We're out of time. The special training must begin immediately." I followed Hong Lian through heavily guarded underground passages to the deepest part of the base, standing before a massive gravity-isolated chamber door. The terrifying energy waves radiating from beyond the door made my scales stand on end involuntarily. Hong Lian said gravely, "This is the ultimate trial of the resistance, the abyssal furnace. Inside, it simulates the dark side of the moon, the most extreme higher dimensional crystal suppression environment. Even the elite of the resistance can't last more than 3 minutes." I looked at the heavy alloy door and gave a cold, mocking smile. I said, "If we're aiming to shatter the God Throne, this level of trial is just right." The door slowly opened. A visible tidal wave of gravity crashed towards me. Without any hesitation, I stepped directly inside the furnace. The alloy doors slammed shut behind me, locking me in completely. The scenery around me instantly turned into a barren wasteland of dark blue crystals, the air thick with what felt like tangible higher dimensional radiation. It was as if tens of thousands of tons of steel pressed down on my shoulders. Even breathing felt like swallowing shards of glass, excruciatingly painful. I immediately activated Titan Overdrive, Phase 2, covering my entire body. The dark gold glow of my scales stood out dazzlingly in the dark blue space. The furnace's AI system gave a cold countdown. The first wave of crystal energy tide will strike in 10 seconds. I bend my knees slightly, assuming the perfect defensive stance for absorbing impact. With a thunderous crash, the crystalline ground around me suddenly erupted, countless blue energy blades surging with higher dimensional power, sweeping through like a storm. I swung my dark golden fists, fighting madly within the storm of blades. Each collision sparked blinding flashes and surges of energy. The origin sequence of pressure waves in this extreme environment began to evolve wildly on its own. I could feel my cells greedily absorbing the condensed energy. This brink of death struggle made my blood boil with excitement. Just as I thought, I'd fully adapted to the furnace's extreme pressure. The dark blue crystals throughout the simulation suddenly began to melt in a bizarre way. A gigantic transparent crystalline claw emerged straight from the void. This wasn't a simulated program, but a real projection of a higher being from another dimension. That sickening aura of the moon's dark side parasite swept over me. The immense claw, exuding the power to crush stars, came crashing down on me. My titan scales began to wail under the pressure. Amazingly enough. But instead of being crushed, my fighting spirit was completely unleashed. I threw my head back and let out a defiant roar. I immediately shifted into my third form. My dark golden body instantly ignited with white-red flames of destruction. My legs stomped down hard, shattering the virtual crystal surface beneath me. The ground burst upward like a blazing white meteor, charging straight at the giant claw. The destructive flames collided with the higher dimensional crystal in midair. There was no deafening crash, only a black hole that devoured even the light. I gathered all of my origin power into my right fist and unleashed it with wild abandon. Bite down and shatter for me. I roared like an ancient demon god, and with a crisp, snapping sound, the clearest sound of crystal shattering rang out. That arrogant crystalline claw was actually smashed to pieces by my punch. The violent backlash not only destroyed the cross-dimensional projection link, but also blew apart the entire abyssal furnace's gravity chamber, leaving it utterly shattered. The exceptionally thick underground base had a massive hole blasted into its alloy walls. Through drifting smoke and blaring alarms, I walked out slowly. The incandescent flames on my body gradually died out, and my dark golden scales re-emerged. Honglian and a group of resistance leaders stared at me in shock among the ruins. The looks in their eyes were as if they were seeing a monster that shattered all logic. Honglian swallowed, his dry throat working, and asked me with a trembling voice, "You actually blasted apart the supposedly indestructible abyssal furnace from the inside out?" I casually brushed metal shards from my shoulder and replied calmly, "This kind of toy can't spark my sequence potential anymore. Since the higher dimensional parasites are so eager for death, let's just set out immediately and rip them out of the moon's dark side." Honglian took a deep breath, his gaze growing strong and fanatically determined. "All right. The entire 7th Fleet will follow Lord Origin to the death." 3 days later, a specially modified assault battleship detached from headquarters. This starship was equipped with the Resistance's most advanced energy shielding and anti-radar tech. Our goal was to head straight for the crystal parasite on the moon's dark side. With the help of repair fluid, old Dad was fully restored to his prime. He stood by my side and gazed at the moon, the satellite closest to Earth on the star map. "Xiaoyan, this time old Dad will take point for you. We'll raise their base together, father and son." The starship streaked silently through deep space, moving swiftly and unnoticed. As we drew closer to the moon, a sense of oppression weighed on our hearts. From space, the dark side of the moon wasn't desolate craters at all, but encased in an incredibly thick, massive purple-black crystal core, completely sealed off. Countless crystal tentacles, like cables, drilled deep into the moon's core. They were madly draining the satellite's last reserves of starlight energy. Honglian rapidly worked the control console, and the ship shifted into silent stealth mode. We were about to penetrate the higher dimensional energy shield surrounding the crystal core. Everyone had to activate personal energy shields to prevent mental contamination. I looked out the porthole at those revolting, enormous purple-black crystals. The devouring instinct of the origin sequence stirred restlessly once again, letting out a roar of longing. The starship was like an invisible steel needle, silently piercing through a gap in the defense grid, just as we were about to succeed. At the moment of landing on the surface of the moon, every radar screen on the console suddenly turned to static all at once. Just when I thought our cloaking system could fool all surveillance, from the top of the starship, a sudden noise erupted, a deafening crash as if to rip the ship apart. A colossal crystalline dragon, over 500 meters long, slammed directly onto the armor. Its razor-sharp crystalline claws instantly tore open the newly applied cloaking coating from its massive dark purple eye sockets. Cold, high-dimensional soul fire burned within. Hong Liang cried out in shock. "Oh no, that's Abyss, the ultimate guardian of the hive, Yuming Long." He opened his enormous maw formed by countless crystal clusters and unleashed a breath of destruction. The black-violet dragon breath melted straight through the starship's thick layered energy armor. Alarms inside the starship blared wildly. The cabin's gravity system instantly failed. I grabbed Hong Lian, who was about to be sucked out of the cabin, and threw him toward the safe zone. My dad let out a furious roar and transformed right there into a 100-meter-tall pure white tiger. Braving the violent winds ripping through the starship, he leaped out to face off against the terrifying underworld dragon. I activated my Titan dominance form without hesitation and followed him into space. In the airless vacuum environment, we could only communicate with our minds. My dad's white tiger form seemed small compared to the 500-meter-long crystalline dragon, but he swung his adamantine claws without fear, striking fiercely at the dragon's skeletal frame. A flash of blinding light erupted. One of the crystalline dragon's ribs snapped on the spot, but the dragon didn't feel any pain at all. It lashed its tail at my dad in return. The tremendous force sent him flying, crashing through a crystalline crater. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. The dark golden scales on my back suddenly burst out. They transformed into 2 pairs of domineering dragon wings, entirely condensed from origin energy. This is the new form of the origin sequence I just mastered in the Abyssal Forge. My wings shook violently. I left a trail afterimage through space. In an instant, I shot upward. I landed directly on the broad back of the nether dragon. My fists ignited with white scarlet flames. "Stay down and behave yourself." I swung my fists, smashing down like a pile driver. Every punch contained enough terrifying power to level mountains. The nether dragon's hard crystalline spine began to crack under my relentless blows.
He twisted his massive body in pain,
trying to throw me off his back. But I clung on like a parasite, with my legs tightly squeezing his crystalline bones, and both hands clutching the core spot. That was his primordial soul essence. Crystal Devour. Instincts unleashed. I started crazily siphoning high-dimensional energy from this nether dragon. The nether dragon let out a silent soul roar, thrashing madly in space. The high-dimensional radiation emanating from his body was enough to drive an ordinary person instantly insane. But the origin core inside me was like a black hole that could never be filled, constantly drawing in this deadly radiation and converting it into fuel for my evolution. Within just a few seconds, the nether dragon's resistance started weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. The icy soul fire in his eye sockets dimmed like a candle in the wind. I let out a furious roar, and with a burst of strength in both arms, heard a cracking sound as I forcibly ripped out the crystal. Without its core, the Abyss Jade Nether Dragon instantly disintegrated, turning into countless purple cosmic dust. I hovered in space, completely crushing the energy-laden crystal in my hand. The rate of my origin sequence evolution soared again. I could feel perfection was just within reach. Dad flew out of the shattered ring-shaped mountain, brushing off the purple crystal dust on him, and laughed over the cum, saying I did great. No wonder you're the son I'm most proud of, Lu Zantian. Crisis averted. Honglian, piloting our heavily damaged starship, managed to land it on the crystalline ground. The three of us stood on the dark side of the moon. On that suffocating purple-black soil,
Ahead.
stood a gigantic crystal peak tens of thousands of meters high, piercing straight into the cosmic void. Honglian pointed at the peak, saying, "That's the main nest of the high-dimensional parasites. As long as we destroy the crystal heart inside, we can cut off their control over Earth for good." I took a deep breath, steadying the massive, wild energy I just absorbed. Let's go and face off against these so-called high-dimensional gods who see humans as vessels. We followed the fissures of the crystal mountain, deeper and deeper into the underground core of the nest. All around, densely packed, were all kinds of creatures encased in crystal, not just mutated beasts from Earth, but even many unknown cosmic species. All of them had been used as great priests, giving mocking laughs, saying that before absolute rules, power is nothing but a joke. At the tips of the staffs in their hands, a blinding purple light gleamed, locking onto our positions. 12 destructive high-dimensional disintegration rays, wove together into a net of death, falling swiftly upon us. These rays could directly break down matter into fundamental particles at the atomic level. Dad's face turned pale with shock and tried to shield me, but I yanked him behind me, my eyes instantly turning a pure gold, as my origin core spun wildly inside. Since physical attacks are useless, then I'll deal with you using the laws of higher dimensional space. I clapped my hands together before my chest and forcibly tore open a space rift right in front of us. All 12 deadly disintegration rays were sucked into the chaotic, other dimensional space. The priest's laughter abruptly stopped, and waves of disbelief rippled from the nebula. How can you possibly control spatial folding, the highest laws of the universe? I gave them no chance to talk, instantly blinked through space, and appeared right behind them, with claws burning with flames of destruction. I sliced straight through 2 of the priest's energy bodies. The priests who were struck didn't even scream, before turning into pools of purple energy pus. Their combined shield instantly shattered. Dad seized his chance, transforming into a white tiger and pouncing, his metal tiger claws shredding through the remaining priests like a slaughter machine. Honglian drew her pulse lightsaber, providing precise fire support and cleanup from the rear. In just 2 minutes, all 12 supposedly supreme priests were wiped out by us. I shook the lingering energy off my claws and strode towards the massive crystal heart. As long as I destroy it, this parasitic war crossing countless light years would finally come to a complete end. I raised my right fist, gathering all my origin power, and prepared to deliver a fatal blow. Just as I thought this crystal heart was about to be smashed to pieces by me, a bone-chilling, desperate scream suddenly erupted inside, in a human woman's voice. Right after, the surface of the purple crystal turned transparent, revealing a sealed figure inside. It turned out to be Lin Wan, who had been swallowed by the beast horde at the wasteland fortress half a month ago. Her body was now pierced by countless purple infusion tubes, her soulless eyes staring at me. Lu Yuan, save me. I know I was wrong. Please, don't kill me. I still don't want to die. Her weak voice transmitted directly into my brain, through a high-dimensional psychic link. Honglian was visibly shocked, and said the nest actually used your former partner as the crystal heart's final shield. If you shatter this heart, that woman's soul will be torn apart instantly. Dad frowned as well, saying, these bastards are really insidious, resorting to this kind of psychological warfare. I stared into the crystal heart, at the woman I once gave everything for, at that once proud face, now twisted in terror. Inside me, there wasn't a single ripple of emotion. In fact, I even found it a bit ridiculous. I turned to Honglian and Dad, my tone calm as if discussing a trivial matter. Do you two think the life or death of a traitor like this could threaten someone on the verge of godhood? Without hesitation, I raised my fist, not slowing at all, and slammed it straight at the crystal heart. Lin Wan's shrill, hopeless screams sounded piercing under the force of my punch, yet were utterly insignificant. I looked into her eyes, full of resentment and unwillingness, and gave a cold, mocking smirk. I told you, in my life, you're not even as significant as a speck of dust. With a thunderous boom and an earth-shattering explosion that rocked the entire lunar core, the spring of origin within me blazed with all-annihilating white scarlet flames and pierced straight through the crystal heart. Lin Wan's body and soul were instantly vaporized in that raging energy, leaving no trace behind, not even the faintest mark. Just like her disgraceful life, erased completely, the massive purple crystal heart began an irreversible chain collapse. Unbound high-dimensional energy went wild, turning into a storm that swept through the entire underground space. Honglian shouted anxiously, "The nest is going to explode." This energy is enough to blow the moon in half. We must evacuate immediately. Otherwise, everyone will be buried along with this satellite. I turned to look at the energy storm still raging wildly, a hint of mad determination flashing in my eyes. You guys go first. I'm going to completely devour this massive hive origin and break through to the perfect god realm.
Dad firmly disagreed,
saying it was too dangerous. You'll be blown apart by this power. I forcibly used the laws of space to tear open a stable teleportation channel to the starship, then took Dad and Red Lotus and pushed them in without a word, sealing off their retreat. Don't worry, Dad. I told you, I'm going to break all the established laws of this universe. The moment the channel closed, I turned around to face the energy tide capable of destroying stars. I deactivated the Titan tyrant form, assuming the state of a pure human flesh body. Floating in the center of the storm, the origin core in my chest erupted with an unprecedented, brilliant dark gold light. Come on, let me see what this so-called ultimate high-dimensional energy can actually push me to. The violent purple energy, like a bursting tsunami, poured crazily into my body's cells. This kind of pain was more intense than any previous awakening, tens of thousands of times over. My bones were constantly shattering and reconstructing. My muscles were constantly tearing and healing. In the agonizing pain, my consciousness started to blur, as if falling into an endless abyss. But I held tightly onto the last bit of clarity, refusing to bow or surrender to this low-level pain. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe it was just a moment. Maybe it was long centuries. That apocalyptic energy storm was actually completely absorbed by me through brute force. The purple-black crystal core on the dark side of the moon, lacking energy support, began to peel off and collapse in large patches. I slowly opened my eyes in the endless void. My pupils had turned into the deep cosmic starry sky. My body's surface had no exaggerated scales or overbearing flame effects, just a kind of back-to-basics perfect contour, flowing with a faint dark gold divine glow. This is the ultimate realm of 100% origin sequence awakening, the cosmic divine body. I casually raised my hand and gave a light wave. The surrounding shattered void actually healed itself miraculously. I looked down at the moon beneath my feet, already riddled with holes, but finally free from the parasite. Then I looked up at the vast, boundless, and deeper universe where stars twinkled further away. I know this isn't the end. This is only the true beginning of me conquering the sea of stars with my fists. I restrained the terrifying energy within my body that was enough to tear galaxies apart. With a flash of my figure, I crossed hundreds of thousands of kilometers of distant vacuum, instantly appearing inside the Resistance's damaged starship. Red Lotus and Dad were staring anxiously at the holographic detection screen. Seeing me appear out of thin air, their eyes widened in disbelief, because on my body, there wasn't even a trace of energy leakage. I was like a normal human from Earth with no combat power. But as a top-tier beast of the Jengold White Tiger, Dad's instinct told him that the current me was 10,000 times more terrifying than the previous Dark Gold Titan. You actually survived, and you even successfully broke the limits of life. Red Lotus stepped forward excitedly, carefully sizing up my current state. I nodded slightly, just about to tell them the hive had been completely destroyed. when the starship's piercing, top-level doomsday alarm suddenly blared madly again. The coordinates representing Earth's defense line on the holographic star map flashed with a piercing blood-red light. What's going on? Could it be there's still a hidden high-dimensional parasite node on Earth? Red Lotus's slender fingers became a blur on the console. The images she frantically pulled up made all the resistance soldiers present gasp in shock. On the dark side of the moon, the massive high-dimensional energy collapse caused by the hive's destruction had actually, on Earth's synchronous orbit, torn open an intergalactic wormhole. A metal fortress 1/3 larger than the entire moon was slowly, from the wormhole emitting eerie purple light, squeezing its way out. That is a Starpoint-class judgment fortress of a high-dimensional civilization. Red Lotus's voice was trembling. They received the top-level SOS sent by the hive right before it died. The coordinates, they intend to wipe the entire solar system where Earth is located, right off the star map. I looked at the images of that terrifying metal fortress that blotted out the sky. There was no fear in my eyes. Instead, an even hotter battle intent ignited. Since I just broke through to the perfect god realm, I'll use this junk ship to test my skills. I told Red Lotus to move the starship to a safe area near Jupiter's orbit immediately. But Dad let out a roar, transforming into his demi-human form, insisting on coming with me. I patted Dad's broad shoulder and said with a smile, "No need for you to act this time. Let your son show you what a real dimensional strike looks like." Before I finished speaking, I had already merged into the void again, vanishing from the starship's cabin. When I reappeared above Earth's orbit, the fortress had completely arrived. Its massive shadow almost completely blocked the sunlight from the entire Earth. At the bottom of the fortress, tens of thousands of red destruction beams lit up. The muzzles were just when I thought they were preparing to carpet bomb Earth indiscriminately. From inside the fortress, a mental wave suddenly resounded throughout the entire solar system. Hand over the perfect origin vessel, or this blue planet will be completely annihilated. I gave a cold laugh. My figure moved through space, stepping forward as if strolling in a courtyard. With every step, the cosmic space beneath my feet rippled with a golden circle. I am right here. If you have the guts, get out here yourself. Though my voice was not loud, it clearly reached every corner of the fortress. The metal fortress's main cannon immediately locked onto my position. A dark matter annihilation beam, over 100 kilometers in diameter, suddenly erupted. Wherever this beam passed, even cosmic space was completely decomposed into nothingness, facing this terrifying strike that could easily destroy an Earth-like planet. I didn't dodge, nor did I activate any energy shields. I just slowly raised my right hand and lightly tapped my index finger against the beam. A miraculous scene played out in the cold, dead vacuum of space. That apocalyptic dark matter beam, at the moment it touched my fingertip, actually acted as if it hit an insurmountable wall of absolute law. A wall of size. All the energy was instantly compressed, finally turning into a black glass bead, which I casually toyed with between my two fingers. The high-ranking commanders inside the fortress were clearly completely stunned by this scene. They couldn't understand how a carbon-based life form could possibly catch a spiked cannon round with bare hands. I didn't give them any time to think, and flicked that black glass bead back. The glass bead turned into a black bolt of lightning faster than light, crashing hard into the fortress. With a loud boom, an indescribably terrifying explosion lit up in space. On the outermost layer of the fortress, which was said to withstand a supernova explosion, the absolute barrier shield was actually shattered completely like a brittle eggshell by that strike. Right after, I spread my arms wide, and the origin core inside me started to run in reverse. I want you arrogant parasites up there to taste what it's like to be consumed. A massive dark gold black hole began slowly taking shape behind me. The devouring force radiating from the black hole instantly enveloped the entire gigantic fortress. The metal armor on the fortress exterior began ripping apart uncontrollably and was sucked in. Countless higher dimensional beings were fleeing in escape pods in terror, trying to get out of the gravity field. But in the face of this power, on the level of a cosmic deity, all efforts were futile. Just when I thought the fortress had completely given up resistance, the core region of the fortress suddenly burst forth with a shockingly familiar aura. It was an origin energy wave that came from the exact same source as the origin sequence in me.
Next.
A figure shrouded in blinding white light broke through the fortress shell. He held in his hand a battle spear, forged from pure origin energy, and charged at me with a speed that even startled me now, stabbing straight at my brow. My eyes narrowed sharply. I dodged that deadly strike sideways and grabbed his spear with my other hand. The white light faded. That man revealed a face that shocked me beyond words.
He actually looked exactly like this body's father.
Lu Zhanshen. But I knew he definitely wasn't my old man, because my old man is still in Jupiter's orbit. Who are you? Why do you have the same face as my old man? And the same origin aura? That man gazed at me coldly, with no trace of human emotion in his eyes. I am Prototype 0, the original Genesis model, and also your genetic template, you rebellious defective product. Today, the main brain must completely reclaim you. Hearing that sentence, the confusion in my heart was instantly replaced by boundless rage. So that's it. The higher dimensional parasites not only stole Earth's psionic energy, they had set their sights on my father's genetic sequence all along. I don't care what kind of original prototype you are, if you dare to face me with that face. Today, I'll destroy you along with the main brain behind you, and turn you both into cosmic dust. I released my spear, and my right fist became a dark golden meteor, slamming viciously into his chest. But he threw a punch as well, and our origin powers clashed fiercely in space. This is what a true battle between gods looks like. The surrounding space was shattered to pieces. Although he didn't have my flawless cosmic god body, quite as perfect, the origin energy within him flowed endlessly, as if connected to the entire universe. I quickly realized he wasn't even fighting me with his own strength. He was drawing power from that massive metal fortress, from the Stariver power reactor within. If you want to compete in energy consumption, then I'll oblige you, soulless puppet. I stopped holding back. The dark golden black hole behind me instantly expanded tenfold. And I was not only devouring the fortress's armor, but absorbing the energy he released as well. On his face, there finally appeared an expression of pain from core overload unique to machines. Seizing the moment when his movements froze, I swept in front of him in a flash, gripping his shoulders tightly with both hands, and slammed him hard against the metal fortress. The tremendous impact punched a massive hole through the fortress's thick exterior. I followed close behind, turning into a streak of dark golden light, and shot into the inner corridors of the fortress. From the inside, I would totally dismantle this pinnacle star-class weapon fortress of higher dimensional civilization. The interior space was like an impossibly vast mechanical labyrinth, with countless blue-glowing higher dimensional battle machine bugs swarming toward me like a tidal wave. But in the face of absolute godly power, numbers meant nothing anymore. With each punch I swung, vast clusters of machine bugs were instantly vaporized into nothingness. Following that familiar primordial aura, I fought my way to the very heart of the fortress. At last I arrived in a vast and grand metal hall. The original prototype with my father's face was standing right at the center of the hall, and hovering behind him was a strange polyhedron radiating 9-colored light. That polyhedron seemed alive, pulsating continuously, radiating the power of rules. The prototype wiped golden blood from the corner of his mouth, pointed at the polyhedron and said to me, "This is the supreme core of our higher dimensional civilization, the all-knowing, all-powerful cosmic cube. As long as the cube exists, I can resurrect endlessly, and double my power each time." As soon as he said that, his previously damaged body instantly returned to pristine condition, and even his origin aura surged to twice what it was before. I narrowed my eyes slightly, staring at the so-called all-knowing, all-powerful cosmic cube. I said, in this world, there is no such thing as an invincible, all-knowing, all-powerful being. If there is, it could only be me, with these fists that can shatter all rules. I launched myself forward with explosive force, causing the metal floor of the grand hall to cave in under my feet, and like a raging supernova, I crashed straight into the original prototype. He roared in fury, swung his battle spear, trying to block my unstoppable assault. But in the face of my 100% awakened ultimate origin power, he was completely outmatched. I shattered his origin battle spear with one punch, then immediately smashed his chest with a kick, just as I thought he'd try to use the cube to resurrect infinitely again. I suddenly felt a deadly chill wash over me from behind. From what had just been empty space behind me, hundreds of chains suddenly reached out without warning, all made of pure nine-colored light, containing inescapable sealing laws, instantly wrapping around my limbs and torso, binding me tightly in midair. I struggled with all my might, only to find the origin power inside me was completely suppressed. The prototype whose chest I had just shattered was now grinning eerily, his chest wound instantly healed as he walked up to me, his gaze filled with pity as he looked at me. Did you think I was really fighting you? I was only stalling for time to activate the cube. True omniscience and omnipotence means being able to rewrite the genetic code deep within you at will. He placed his hand on my forehead, and I felt a terrifying data stream surge into my brain. He was trying to erase every human memory and feeling I've had for the past 10 years, to reformat me, and turn me into an emotionless killing machine, just like them. The struggle in the wastelands, my father's smiling face, and Honglian's hopes all flashed wildly through my mind. Number, I will never let you disgusting parasites get your way. Deep inside, I let out a hysterical roar and tried to break through the seal by force. But under the supreme laws of the cosmic cube, my resistance felt utterly feeble. Had I really just reached the threshold of godhood, only to fall in this bizarre place? At that desperate moment, my always dormant origin core in my chest suddenly erupted with a chaotic gray light that was completely untouched by the cosmic laws. This light was impossibly domineering, devouring all the invasive data in my mind in an instant. Then that gray power surged back along the nine-colored chains, heading straight for the cube. That so-called all-knowing, all-powerful cosmic cube actually let out a terrified tremor. The original prototype jerked his hand away in horror, stumbling back repeatedly, as if he'd seen the devil. Impossible! How could your body conceal chaos origin power that surpasses higher dimensional laws? I sneered coldly, the nine-colored chains wrapped around me crumbling under the gray light, until they broke apart piece by piece. I told you I won't just break Earth's limits. I'll shatter the rules of this galactic sea too. Free once again. I gathered that chaotic gray origin power in my right fist. No fancy moves, just the simplest and most brutal punch. That punch ignored all spatial distance and struck the cosmic cube directly, with a sound, as if the entire universe fell silent in a single moment. The nine-colored polyhedron actually cracked under my punch. The prototype wailed in utter despair, his body collapsing alongside the cube, as endless higher dimensional energy burst from the cracks, devoured by the greed of my origin core. The entire Spire-class metallic fortress began to collapse completely due to the loss of core energy support, started to disintegrate on all fronts. I ignored that counterfeit, turning to ashes. Dad immediately turned around and dashed out. This massive structure was about to go supernova. The blast could utterly destroy several surrounding planets. I had to get back to Jupiter's orbit before the explosion. To protect Dad and Crimson Lotus's starship, I transformed into a streak of gray light, racing through the collapsing metal labyrinth at full speed. Right before the fortress exploded entirely, I broke through that thick, heavy armor shell. Behind me, a blinding light flared up, 10,000 times brighter than the sun. A terrifying glare even more dazzling. The fortress explosion sent out a devastating shockwave, and a gamma ray burst that swept across space. I hesitated not for a second, immediately turning around and with my divine body I shielded Earth from the shockwave. I spread my arms wide. A gray chaos shield instantly expanded hundreds of thousands of kilometers, blocking all the devastating energy that could destroy Earth's ecosystem, completely intercepted beyond geosynchronous orbit. I stood like an unshakable wall of size, stubbornly guarding the mother planet where I grew up. When the aftermath of the explosion finally dissipated, a field of metallic debris appeared in Earth's orbit. I let out a long breath, feeling the power inside me, after this crisis, becoming even more refined. I triggered another spatial leap, returning to the resistance hidden near Jupiter's orbit. When Dad on the starship saw me come back safe,
He excitedly rushed over and gave me a big bear hug.
Crimson Lotus stared at the completely destroyed fortress on the holoscreen, eyes full of shock and awe. You didn't just destroy the high-dimensional civilization's judgment fortress. You also protected Earth. You're a miracle. I shook my head and said, the depths of high-dimensional civilization go far beyond this. We have to be prepared. As expected, the moment I finished speaking, a newly established communication channel was suddenly forcibly hacked in.